Sign here and take your 20,000, then disappear. The words cut deep as Elena stared at the divorce papers. 3 years of marriage reduced to pocket change. Marcus leaned forward from his hospital bed, his voice dripping with false concern. It's more than generous, considering what you brought to this marriage. His mother nodded approvingly from her diamond-adorned chair. Finally, some sense. That woman has been a burden long enough. Elena's fingers traced the pen they'd given her, a cheap imitation that felt wrong in her hands. Her own Mont Blanc pen sat hidden in her purse, along with something else they didn't know about. 20,000, she repeated quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Take it and start fresh somewhere else, Marcus said. It's the best offer you'll ever get. Elena looked around the hospital room at the faces watching her, his family, his business partner, even his mistress lurking nearby. They didn't know her secret. And tomorrow everything would change. 3 years earlier, Elena had walked into that same hospital as a different woman. Not different in wealth, that had always been there, carefully hidden but different in hope. She'd believed in love that transcended bank accounts, in a man who might choose her for reasons that had nothing to do with her Forbes listing. But in the locked drawer beneath their shared desk lay documents that would have made Marcus's mother's diamonds look cheap. Morrison Technologies had started as Elena's father's software company. At 28, Elena had turned it into a tech business worth $800 million. The corporate offices in Silicon Valley knew her as CEO Elena Morrison. Her husband knew her as Ellie, who worked part-time at a local art gallery. The test had seemed simple at first. Could someone love her without knowing about the private jets and board meetings? Could someone love her for who she was, not what she owned? For 3 years, she'd lived with the answer. You could do so much better, his sister Victoria had whispered at last year's family gathering, loud enough for Elena to hear. Someone from our world. Our world, as if money was geography. Elena had perfected the art of hiding her wealth. Her clothes came from thrift stores and discount retailers, except for 3 carefully hidden pieces, the Hermès bag, a vintage Cartier watch she never wore, and a Mont Blanc pen in her purse's secret compartment. These weren't just accessories. They reminded her who she really was when Marcus's family made her feel worthless. The gallery job provided perfect cover. Elena Morrison, tech CEO, had board meetings every Tuesday. She told Marcus these were book club meetings. Her assistant Sarah Brooks helped schedule calls for early mornings when Marcus slept off his latest business dinners. Just wait until Dad's will reading, Marcus had told his drinking buddy over the phone, thinking Elena was showering. Then we can upgrade to someone more suitable, someone who brings something to the table. The shower water had run cold, but not as cold as Elena's realization. She'd continued pretending, but now she documented everything. Every cruel comment from his family, every time he forgot his wallet when they went out, every late-night phone call with Victoria about exit strategies. She'd even hired a private investigator to follow him. The investigator discovered Marcus was having an affair with his father's business partner's daughter, a woman with a trust fund and the right last name. The evidence folder in her locked drawer had grown thick. Photos, recorded conversations, and bank records showed how Marcus had been slowly stealing from their joint account while building his own secret savings. He thought he was playing chess. Elena was counting cards. Now, watching him in that hospital bed, Elena felt the familiar weight of her Mont Blanc pen in her purse. 3 years of being treated like a burden were about to end. Not with tears or dramatic confrontations, but with the kind of quiet precision that had built empires. Marcus's latest medical emergency had finally pushed Elena past her breaking point. His convenient collapse during an expensive dinner with his mistress had landed him in the hospital. The bills were mounting, and his family's solution was predictable: divorce the burden, marry the money. They had no idea they were talking about divorcing $800 million. Elena stood, smoothing her modest skirt with hands that had signed billion-dollar deals. "I should let you rest," she said, her voice carrying just enough concern to maintain the performance. But as she reached the door, Marcus's mother delivered the words that would change everything. "Don't worry, dear. Once this is all settled, you'll be free to find someone more appropriate for your circumstances." The visiting hours sign outside blurred as Elena walked past, her mind already 3 steps ahead. Tomorrow, the circumstances would start changing. The Morris Country Club dining room buzzed with the kind of conversations that shaped city politics over salmon and white wine. Elena had learned to navigate these waters carefully, speaking only when spoken to, smiling at jokes that weren't funny, playing the role of Marcus's grateful wife. Tonight felt different. Marcus's miraculous recovery from his hospital scare had inspired the family to celebrate with their usual crowd old money socialites who measured worth in golf handicaps and charity committee positions. "Elena, sweetheart," Mrs. Morrison's voice carried across the table like a judgment. "We've been thinking about your future." The conversations around them dimmed as heads turned. Elena recognized the setup. She'd seen it orchestrated against other unsuitable spouses over the years. Her hands remained steady on her water glass, though her heart rate quickened. "Your husband's health scare was a wake-up call," Victoria chimed in, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the chandelier light. "We want what's best for everyone." Marcus sat forward, his color fully returned now that the cameras weren't rolling. His affair with Catherine Whitmore had become an open secret among their circle, though they all pretended Elena didn't know. The woman in question sat 3 tables away, her engagement ring from her previous marriage glinting as she raised her champagne flute in a toast to new beginnings. "The thing is," Marcus began, his voice taking on the patronizing tone Elena had grown to hate, "I've been carrying a lot of financial burden lately." A lie. Elena's bank records showed she'd paid for his car, his credit cards, even his mother's recent European vacation through a series of loans that were never repaid. She didn't need to finish. Everyone understood. Elena wasn't earning enough to justify her place at this table, in this family, in this life. James Whitmore, Catherine's father and Marcus's business partner, leaned forward with the smile of a shark sensing blood. "We've prepared some papers, just to make the transition easier for everyone." The divorce document slid across the white tablecloth like a death certificate. Elena stared at them without touching, noting the careful legalese that would leave her with nothing while Marcus kept the house, the cars, and the joint accounts she'd secretly funded. "Sign these," Victoria said, producing a Mont Blanc pen not Elena's hidden one, but a cheaper imitation. "And we'll provide a generous settlement, $20,000, enough for a fresh start." The room had gone quiet now, their little drama attracting attention from nearby tables. Elena felt the weight of 40 pairs of eyes, all waiting for her response to this public humiliation. 20,000, Elena repeated slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's more than fair," Marcus said, reaching across to squeeze her hand with false affection. "I mean, let's be honest about what you brought to this marriage." The words hit like physical blows. 3 years of playing poor while funding his lifestyle, 3 years of enduring his family's condescension, 3 years of being treated like a financial burden while secretly being the benefactor. Catherine Whitmore raised her glass from across the room, a toast to her coming victory. "The papers also include a non-disclosure agreement," James added smoothly. "Family privacy, you understand." Elena's fingers found her purse, touching the real Mont Blanc pen hidden in its secret compartment. In that same compartment lay her phone, currently recording every word of this conversation. The divorce papers before her allocated Marcus assets that, technically, belonged to Morrison Technologies, including the house he'd bought with her money. "I need to think about this," Elena said finally. "Think about what?" Mrs. Morrison's voice sharpened. "This is generous considering everything." The emphasis on everything carried the weight of every snide comment, every time they'd made Elena feel small, every assumption about her worthlessness. Elna stood slowly, her modest dress and department store shoes making her look fragile among their designer outfits. but her voice, when she spoke, carried a strange certainty. "You're right. I should know my worth." She gathered her purse and cardigan with careful dignity, leaving the divorce papers untouched on the table. As she walked toward the exit, conversations resumed behind her, punctuated by cruel laughter. At the door, she turned back once. Marcus was already moving toward Catherine's table, the performance over now that his wife had been properly dismissed. Elena Morrison, tech CEO, walked into the parking lot with her mind perfectly clear. Elena's downtown apartment transformed the moment she closed the door. The modest furniture slid aside to reveal a hidden wall panel behind which lay her real office. 3 monitors displaying Morrison Technologies' real-time stock performance, global market analysis, and secure communication channels with her executive team. Sarah Brooks appeared on the primary screen within minutes of Elena's encrypted call. "They want me to sign papers for $20,000 and disappear quietly." Elena uploaded the evening's audio recording to their secure computer system. James Whitmore was there. This isn't just about divorce. Marcus is positioning himself for a business deal with the Whitmores. Sarah's face tightened as she reviewed the files Elena was sending. "They have no idea who they're dealing with, do they?" "None." Elena opened her laptop, revealing months of documentation she'd compiled about Marcus's activities. "But we're going to give them a chance to do the right thing first." The first phase of Elena's plan unfolded with surgical precision. She'd learned patience in the boardroom. Sometimes the most devastating moves required setup that lasted months, not minutes. The next morning, Elena called Marcus from the gallery where she supposedly worked full-time. In reality, the owner was one of her art collection advisors, providing cover for her real activities. "I want to understand the papers," she told him, her voice carrying just enough uncertainty to maintain his confidence. "Could we meet somewhere private?" Marcus suggested his favorite restaurant, the one where he regularly met Catherine. Elena agreed, knowing he'd chosen the location to demonstrate his power. He had no idea she'd been paying the establishment's bills through a shell company for the past year. That evening, Elena arrived early and positioned herself at a corner table with clear sight lines to the entrance and Marcus's usual booth. Her outfit, a simple dress from Target, and her carefully worn wedding ring projected vulnerability, while the Mont Blanc pen in her purse recorded everything. Marcus arrived 20 minutes late, a power play Elena had expected. What she hadn't anticipated was Catherine joining him. "I hope you don't mind," Marcus said with false concern. But Catherine wanted to explain how these transitions usually work. Catherine Whitmore slid into the booth with the casual cruelty of someone who'd done this before. Her engagement ring, still from her previous marriage, caught the restaurant's dim lighting as she opened a leather portfolio. "The thing you need to understand," Catherine began, her voice honey-sweet with poison, "is that men like Marcus require certain standards. The country club, the business connections, the social requirements." Elena nodded, playing her part while her recording device captured every word. "$20,000 is incredibly generous," Marcus added, signing to the waiter for his usual wine bottle that cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Most women in your position get nothing." "My position?" Elena asked quietly. "Well," Catherine leaned forward conspirationally, "you're not exactly equipped for his lifestyle, are you? The business dinners, the client relationships, the expectations." Elena's fingers traced her water glass's rim, a gesture both women interpreted as nervousness. In reality, she was calculating. Marcus's business dinners were charged to corporate accounts she'd been monitoring. His client relationships included affairs with at least 3 women besides Catherine. The expectations were being funded by money he'd systematically stolen from their joint accounts. "I've been thinking," Elena said, letting vulnerability creep into her voice. "Maybe I should just disappear. Make it easy for everyone." Marcus's relief was visible. "That's probably best. For everyone. I could move somewhere quiet. Maybe use the settlement to start over." Elena paused, watching their faces. "Though I'm curious, where did you two meet?" The question landed like a trap neither saw coming. Catherine and Marcus exchanged glances, clearly unprepared for Elena to ask about their relationship timeline. "We've been friends for years," Catherine said carefully. "Since before your marriage," Marcus added, then immediately realized his mistake. Elena nodded thoughtfully, her recording device capturing their admission. "That's nice. Having friends you can count on." The conversation continued for another hour, with Elena extracting details about their relationship, their business plans, and their assumptions about her financial situation. Every word built her case while they assumed they were convincing a naive woman to accept her fate. After they left together, no longer bothering to hide their relationship, Elena remained at the table, reviewing her recordings. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "The financial team found something interesting in Marcus's accounts." Elena smiled for the first time in months. The next morning, she implemented Phase 2. Instead of reporting to the gallery, Elena drove to Morrison Technologies' satellite office across town. Her assistant had prepared a comprehensive dossier on the Whitmore family business, Marcus's financial activities, and the legal implications of his attempted asset seizure. "He's been using forged signatures," Sarah explained, spreading documents across the conference table. "Your joint accounts, the house deed, even some corporate contracts. He's been positioning himself as your financial power of attorney without any legal authority." Elena studied the evidence with the calm focus that had made her successful in tech. Each forged document was a felony. Each financial transfer was theft. Each lie to his family about her contributions was fraud. "What about the Whitmores?" Elena asked. "James Whitmore's company is leveraged to the breaking point. They need Marcus's assets, meaning what they think are his assets, to avoid bankruptcy. Catherine's previous divorce left her with nothing. They're all betting on a payoff that technically belongs to you." Elena pulled out her Mont Blanc pen, the real one, and began signing authorization forms, not for divorce settlements or disappearances, but for financial investigations, legal inquiries, and corporate actions that would unravel 3 years of systematic deception. "We can have preliminary findings within 48 hours, full financial reconstruction within a week, legal papers filed within 2 weeks. Elena nodded, then made one more call, to Marcus. "I've decided," she told him, her voice carrying the perfect note of defeated resignation. "I'll sign the papers. But I want to do it properly, with lawyers present. Can we arrange something formal?" Marcus's excitement was audible. "Of course! James can arrange everything. How about next Friday at his office?" "Perfect," Elena said. "I'll bring my lawyer." What she didn't mention was that her lawyer was the same firm that handled Morrison Technologies' most sensitive mergers and acquisitions, or that James Whitmore's office building was currently under investigation for several financial irregularities her company had discovered. Next Friday, they'd get their formal signing ceremony, just not the one they were expecting. Elena's investigation expanded beyond personal betrayal when Sarah's team uncovered something bigger. "You need to see this," Sarah said during their encrypted video call Monday morning. Morrison Technologies' security team had been tracking unusual money patterns in the Whitmore-Morrison business partnerships. "Marcus isn't just cheating on you. He's been stealing money from multiple sources." The evidence unfolded like a crime story. Marcus had created fake companies using his struggling wife story to explain his modest lifestyle while moving stolen money through foreign bank accounts. The Whitmore family wasn't just accepting him as Catherine's new husband. They were helping him wash the money. Elena authorized full surveillance, both digital and physical. Her security team, the same professionals who protected Morrison Technologies' business secrets, began documenting every meeting, every transaction, every conversation between the criminals. Tuesday's revelation arrived through an unexpected source. Marcus's cleaning lady, Rosa Martinez, who'd been working for Elena and Marcus for 2 years. Rosa had always treated Elena with genuine kindness, unlike the family that employed them both. "Mrs. Morrison," Rosa called Elena at the gallery, her voice tight with worry. I found something at your house. You should see. Elena met Rosa at a coffee shop near the gallery, far from Marcus's usual locations. Rosa produced a bundle of documents she'd found hidden behind Marcus's dresser mirror, financial statements showing accounts Elena had never seen, property deeds for real estate she'd never visited, and most damning, correspondence with a law firm about expediting asset acquisition through divorce proceedings. He's been planning this for over a year, Rosa said quietly. There are letters from before his father even got sick. Elena photographed everything while Rosa kept watch. The documents revealed that Marcus's father's sudden illness had been anticipated and financially leveraged. Insurance policies, business succession plans, even Catherine's divorce from her previous husband had been choreographed to consolidate wealth and power. He's been stealing your credit for 3 years, Sarah explained during their emergency meeting. But it gets worse. He's also been selling information about Morrison Technologies' clients to the Whitmores, business spying. Elena felt the anger turn into something colder and more focused. This wasn't just personal betrayal. It was an attack on her company, her employees, and everyone who trusted Morrison Technologies with their business. Thursday's surveillance yielded the most damaging evidence yet. Elena's security team had positioned cameras near James Whitmore's office, expecting to document money meetings. Instead, they captured a conversation between Marcus, Catherine, and James that revealed the full scope of their crimes. Once the divorce is final, Marcus's voice came through clearly on the recording, we'll have papers showing Elena as the dependent spouse. That makes any claims about hidden assets look like desperate lies. Catherine's laughter was sharp with cruelty. The beauty is, she's been so isolated from our social circle, no one will believe she has any significant assets. Who's going to testify that a gallery worker is secretly wealthy? James Whitmore's voice carried the authority of someone used to buying his way out of problems. The financial investigators I've arranged will confirm that any wealth belongs to Marcus through his family connections. Elena's name isn't on any of the major accounts, so legally she can't prove ownership. Elena's blood chilled as she realized the sophistication of their plan. They weren't just stealing her money, they were rewriting her entire financial history. But James made a critical error in his next statement. The Morrison Technologies stock transfer should be complete by next week. Having Marcus as a documented shareholder will legitimize our claim to the corporate assets. Elena paused the recording, her hands shaking not with fear but with fury. They were attempting to steal her company. Friday morning arrived with Elena's final piece of evidence gathering. She'd arranged to meet Marcus for coffee, ostensibly to discuss their upcoming lawyer meeting. In reality, she wanted to give him one last chance to come clean. "I'm proud of you," Marcus said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand with false affection. "This takes courage." "Does it?" Elena asked. "Admitting when you're outmatched." "Accepting reality. Most people fight change, but you're being smart about it." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "What happens to the house?" "The lawyers will handle everything. Don't worry about the details." "And the joint accounts?" Marcus's smile flickered briefly. "Elena, you know we've been living beyond our means. There isn't much left." A lie. Elena's record showed over $200,000 in accounts Marcus thought he'd hidden from her. "Will you be happy?" Elena asked, the question genuine despite everything. For a moment, Marcus's mask slipped. Elena saw something that might have been guilt, or perhaps just regret at having to maintain the charade so long. "Happiness is about being with the right person," he said finally. "Someone who fits your life." Elena looked down at her wedding ring, spinning it slowly on her finger. "I suppose it is." She stood to leave, but turned back with one final question. "Marcus, in all the time we've been married, did you ever wonder about my family, my background, where I came from before we met?" Marcus's expression showed mild confusion. "You told me. Small family, not much money, working your way through college. Why?" Elena smiled sadly. "No reason. I just wondered if you'd ever been curious. As she walked away, Elena realized that Marcus's incuriosity about her past hadn't been considerate. It had been strategic. He'd never asked about her background because he'd assumed there was nothing worth knowing. That evening, Elena sat in her hidden office, reviewing 5 days of evidence with Sarah and her legal team. The case they'd built was overwhelming: fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, business spying, and conspiracy charges that could result in decades of prison time. "We could have them arrested tomorrow," Sarah said. Elena shook her head. "They want a formal signing ceremony. Let's give them exactly what they're asking for." She pulled out her Mont Blanc pen and began signing documents, not divorce papers, but criminal complaints, asset seizure orders, and corporate protection measures that would lock down every account, every property, and every asset the conspirators thought they were about to claim. Monday's ceremony would be formal, all right, just not in the way they expected. Monday morning arrived with the precision of a corporate execution. Elena dressed carefully for what Marcus believed would be her surrender ceremony: a modest navy dress, her worn wedding ring, and her faithful Hermes bag containing everything that would end his world. The detail amused her that the bag he'd mocked for being cheap was worth more than his car. James Whitmore's law office occupied 2 floors of downtown's most prestigious building. Elena had done her homework. The building was owned by one of Morrison Technologies' subsidiary companies, meaning she was technically Whitmore's landlord. The detail amused her as she rode the elevator to the 14th floor. Marcus, Catherine, and James waited in the conference room with their lawyers, 3 attorneys who specialized in asset protection and divorce settlements. Elena arrived with a single briefcase and what appeared to be nervous energy. "Elena, thank you for being reasonable about this," James began, his voice carrying the smooth authority of old money and newer corruption. "We've prepared everything to make this transition as smooth as possible." She pulled out her phone and displayed a photograph of bank statements Rosa had found. "I'm not very good with money, but these numbers seem large." Marcus's confidence faltered briefly. "Those are business accounts, Elena. Nothing to do with our marriage." "Oh." Elena nodded, then produced another photo. "What about this one?" "It has both our names." The document showed a corporate investment account with over $500,000 money Marcus had systematically transferred from their joint accounts using forged signatures. "Elena," Catherine interjected with sweet condescension, "this is exactly why you need to let the professionals handle these details. You're getting confused." Elena's next revelation destroyed the room's atmosphere entirely. "I brought my own lawyer," she said, reaching into her briefcase. "I hope that's okay." James nodded indulgently. "Of course. Who did you find?" Elena smiled for the first time that morning. "Peterson, Crane and Associates." The name hit the room like a thunderclap. Peterson, Crane and Associates handled corporate litigation for Fortune 500 companies, including several cases that had resulted in federal prosecutions for financial crimes. "That's expensive," Marcus said slowly. "They're working pro bono," Elena replied. "Something about the case being personally interesting to them." Her phone buzzed with a text she'd been expecting. Elena glanced at it and stood. "Actually, there's someone I'd like you all to meet." The conference room door opened to admit Detective Jennifer Walsh from the Financial Crimes Division, followed by 2 FBI agents and Elena's attorney, Robert Peterson himself. "Good morning," Detective Walsh said, her badge clearly visible. "We need to discuss some irregularities in several financial accounts connected to this divorce proceeding." The color drained from James Whitmore's face. Marcus looked around the room as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. "There seems to be some mistake," Catherine began, but Peterson cut her off. "Mrs. Whitmore, we have recordings of conversations discussing identity theft, business spying, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Would you like to hear them?" Elena reached into her briefcase one final time, producing not the Mont Blanc pen, but a small digital recorder that had been documenting everything for months. "Before we continue," Elena said, her voice suddenly carrying an authority that made everyone else in the room sit up straighter, "I should probably introduce myself properly. Elena pulled out her business card, not the gallery employee card Marcus had seen, but the CEO card that had been hidden in her wallet for 3 years. "I'm Elena Morrison, Chief Executive Officer of Morrison Technologies. Our company is worth approximately $800 million. Marcus, you've been living in a house I own, driving cars I bought, and spending money I earned." The silence that followed was broken by handcuffs clicking. "The divorce papers you wanted me to sign were trying to transfer assets worth several $1,000,000. That's grand theft. The forged signatures are identity fraud. The business information you sold to the Whitmores is corporate spying." Detective Walsh stepped forward. "Marcus Morrison, Catherine Whitmore, and James Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and money laundering." Elena watched as the 3 people who'd spent months planning her humiliation were led away in handcuffs. The divorce papers remained unsigned on the table, now worthless pieces of paper. As the law enforcement officers left with their prisoners, Elena sat alone in the conference room, her hands steady for the first time in months. Her phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. "It's done," Elena said simply. "How do you feel?" Elena looked at her wedding ring, then slowly removed it for the last time. Free. The story broke on every major news channel within hours. Tech CEO's secret marriage exposed and $1,000,000 fraud case dominated the evening headlines. Elena watched from her real office, the executive suite at Morrison Technologies that Marcus had never seen, as reporters dissected 3 years of deception. Marcus had wanted a public divorce to humiliate her. Instead, he'd given her a platform to reveal the truth to the entire world. Elena's phone buzzed constantly with interview requests, but she ignored them all. Her statement would come when she was ready. The real drama unfolded at St. Mary's Hospital, where Marcus's family had gathered in the same waiting room where this story began. Elena arrived uninvited, but not unwelcome. Her charitable foundation had donated millions to the hospital over the years, though the family had never connected the dots. Mrs. Morrison sat in the plastic chair where Elena had endured months of insults, her diamond jewelry now looking garish under the fluorescent lights. Victoria paced near the window, her phone pressed to her ear as she tried to manage the public relations disaster. "Elena!" Mrs. Morrison's voice cracked when she saw her approach. "This is all some terrible mistake, isn't it?" Elena took the seat she'd occupied just a week earlier, when she'd been dismissed as worthless charity. Her presence commanded the room in a way that surprised everyone, including herself. "There's no mistake," Elena said quietly. "Your son has been stealing from me for 3 years. Your family has been treating me like garbage while living off my money. But you're just—" Victoria started, then stopped. The words, "just a gallery employee," died in her throat as the absurdity became clear. "I'm the CEO of a company worth $800 million, Elena continued. "I own the building where Marcus's fake business is located. I've been paying for your European vacations, your country club memberships, and your son's affair expenses." The waiting room filled with whispers as other visitors recognized Elena from the news coverage. Phones emerged, documenting the confrontation that was about to define everyone's future. Mrs. Morrison's face crumpled. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I wanted to know if your son could love someone without a trust fund." The answer, unfortunately, was no. Elena pulled out her tablet, displaying financial records that told the story of their marriage. "Every month for 3 years, I transferred money into our joint account. Every month, Marcus moved it to hidden accounts while telling you I was bleeding him dry." The evidence was undeniable. Receipts for Victoria's shopping trips, charged to credit cards Elena funded. Mrs. Morrison's medical expenses, paid through Elena's corporate insurance. The family's entire lifestyle, subsidized by the woman they'd treated as a burden. "The gallery job was real," Elena continued. "I own the gallery. My art collection is worth more than most people's houses. But I wanted to see if Marcus could respect someone who worked retail, who struggled with bills, who needed support instead of providing it." Elena stood, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the waiting room. Other families had stopped their own conversations to watch the real-life drama unfold. I recorded every cruel comment, every assumption about my worthlessness, every time you made me feel like charity. Your son was planning to divorce me and claim my assets. The Whitmores were helping him commit federal crimes. Mrs. Morrison reached for Elena's hand, but stopped when she saw the look in her eyes. I could have revealed my identity at any time. I could have embarrassed you the way you embarrassed me, but I gave your family 3 years to show basic human decency to someone you thought had nothing to offer. Elena's voice carried throughout the waiting room, and she realized she was delivering the statement she'd been planning without cameras or reporters, just honest words to the people who'd earned them. You failed that test completely. The silence stretched until Victoria found her voice. What happens now? Elena considered the question. The criminal cases would proceed regardless of her wishes. Marcus faced years in federal prison. The Whitmores' business empire was collapsing under investigation. The social circle that had enabled their cruelty was distancing themselves as quickly as possible. Now you learn what it's like to face consequences, Elena said. Marcus will go to prison. The assets he stole will be returned to my company. The house you thought would stay in your family will be sold, with proceeds going to victim assistance programs. She paused, watching the reality settle on their faces. And I'm going to use every lesson you taught me about how money changes people. Except I'm going to apply those lessons to helping others instead of hurting them. Elena walked toward the exit, then turned back one final time. Mrs. Morrison, you asked me once why I thought I deserved your son. The real question was why I thought he deserved me. The waiting room erupted in whispers and phone camera flashes as Elena disappeared down the corridor. By evening, the confrontation would be viewed millions of times across social media platforms. The woman who'd been dismissed as charity had just demonstrated the difference between having money and having class, and shattered every assumption they'd made about a black woman's place in their world. 1 year later, Elena stood before a packed auditorium at the Morrison Foundation's first big summit. The foundation she'd built from her painful experience had already helped over 200 victims of financial abuse, providing legal support, emergency housing, and counseling. Here was the beautiful truth. The money Marcus had tried to steal was now funding the exact support systems that could have protected Elena if she'd needed them. When someone shows you who they are, Elena told the audience of survivors, advocates, and journalists, believe them the first time. But more importantly, when someone shows you who you are, believe yourself. The summit represented more than personal vindication. Elena had used her experience to identify bigger problems in how financial abuse was prosecuted, reported, and prevented. Morrison Technologies had developed new software to help banks identify unusual account activity that might show financial crimes in families. Sarah Brooks, now officially Elena's chief operating officer, managed the foundation's day-to-day operations while maintaining their technology empire. The partnership that had begun in secret conference rooms had evolved into one of the most effective social justice organizations in the country. The numbers are shocking, Sarah reported during their morning meeting. 84% of domestic abuse cases include money problems, but only 12% of victims have access to special legal help. Elena nodded, reviewing case files from their latest intervention. A woman in Chicago whose husband had hidden their assets during divorce proceedings. A mother in Atlanta whose ex-partner had destroyed her credit to prevent her from leaving. A college student whose boyfriend had stolen her identity to fund his gambling addiction. Each case reminded Elena of her own experience, but also of her unique advantages. She'd had the resources to investigate, the connections to build a legal case, and the financial independence to survive the revelation. Most victims possessed none of these protections. The Foundation's legal clinic had won 17 cases in 1 year, recovering over $3 million in stolen assets for victims. More importantly, they'd set legal examples that made financial abuse easier to prosecute and harder to hide. Elena's personal story had become a catalyst for broader change, but she'd been careful to avoid making herself the center of the narrative. The summit focused on systematic solutions, not celebrity justice. "We're announcing the Financial Abuse Prevention app today," Elena told the audience. "It's free, designed to help people document financial irregularities, and connects users directly to legal resources." The app represented 18 months of development, funded entirely by Elena's personal resources. Morrison Technologies had donated the programming expertise, while the foundation provided the legal framework and counseling connections. But Elena's most significant achievement wasn't technological, it was legislative. The Financial Abuse Protection Act passed the state legislature last month, she announced to thunderous applause. It expands legal definitions of domestic abuse to include financial crimes, requires banks to provide enhanced monitoring for vulnerable accounts, and establishes emergency funds for victims who need immediate support. The legislation had been crafted using Elena's case as a blueprint, but designed to protect people without her advantages. Elena had testified before 3 legislative committees, sharing details of Marcus's crimes to illustrate how sophisticated financial abuse had become. The personal cost had been significant. Elena's private life was now public knowledge, her marriage's failures dissected in media coverage and legal proceedings. But the public exposure had also connected her with thousands of other survivors who'd felt isolated and powerless. "I want to introduce someone special," Elena said, stepping aside to welcome Rosa Martinez to the podium. Rosa had become an unlikely hero in Elena's story. Her decision to report Marcus's hidden documents had provided crucial evidence for the criminal prosecution. More importantly, her courage had inspired Elena to consider how many other domestic workers witnessed financial abuse but lacked safe channels to report it. The Morrison Foundation's Worker Protection Program will train domestic employees, caregivers, and service workers to recognize signs of financial abuse, Rosa explained in both English and Spanish. "We'll provide legal protection for workers who report suspected crimes and financial support for anyone who faces retaliation." The program addressed a problem Elena had discovered during her investigation. Domestic workers often witnessed financial crimes, but feared deportation, job loss, or legal complications if they reported suspicious activity. The Foundation's program provided immigration legal support and job protection guarantees. Elena watched Rosa receive a standing ovation, remembering their first nervous meeting in the coffee shop. Rosa's courage had saved Elena's case, but Elena's resources had empowered Rosa to help protect other workers. The summit concluded with Elena's most personal announcement. "I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations at Morrison Technologies to focus entirely on the Foundation's work," she said. "Sarah Brooks will become CEO of Morrison Technologies, while I transition to full-time advocacy and Foundation leadership." The decision had been months in the making. Elena's technology empire would continue thriving under Sarah's leadership, while Elena pursued the work that had emerged from her darkest experience. "Money is power," Elena concluded her keynote speech. "But power without purpose is just wealth. Purpose without power is just hope. The combination of the two can change everything." As the summit ended and attendees networked around resource tables and information booths, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in years: genuine community. The Foundation had connected her with people who understood both the pain of betrayal and the possibility of transformation. Her Mont Blanc pen had signed divorce papers, criminal complaints, and legislation that protected other people from experiencing her nightmare. Justice, Elena realized, wasn't just about punishment, it was about prevention. 2 years after the summit, Elena's foundation operated from a converted warehouse in downtown, a space deliberately chosen for its accessibility and practical atmosphere. The building hummed with activity: legal consultations, support group meetings, technology training sessions, and the quiet conversations that marked healing in progress. Elena's office occupied the same square footage as her old hidden space, but everything else had changed. Glass walls provided transparency, comfortable seating encouraged collaboration, and artwork from local survivors decorated every surface. Most importantly, the door remained open. Coffee? Asked Maria Santos, appearing in the doorway with 2 steaming mugs and a smile that hadn't existed 6 months earlier. Maria had arrived at the foundation broken, financially devastated by an ex-husband who'd destroyed her credit, emptied their accounts, and left her homeless with 2 children. Now she managed the foundation's client services department and was completing her paralegal certification with foundation support. "How's the new housing program working?" Elena asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. 12 families placed in permanent housing this month, Maria reported with justified pride. The Rental Assistance Fund is covering deposits and first-month rent, giving people time to rebuild their credit and find stable employment. The program represented Elena's evolution from seeking personal justice to creating systematic change. Rather than simply prosecuting financial abuse after it occurred, the foundation now focused on preventing homelessness, career disruption, and long-term financial damage that kept victims trapped. "The bank partnership program is expanding," Sarah reported. 17 financial institutions have implemented our financial abuse detection software. We've identified over 400 potential cases and connected victims with resources before they lost access to their accounts. Elena nodded, watching Maria take notes with the same intense focus Elena had once applied to corporate strategy. The foundation's success came from people like Maria survivors who'd transformed their pain into expertise and their recovery into service to others. "Personal update," Sarah continued with a grin. "Elena's dating someone." Maria's face lit up with delighted surprise. Elena felt her cheeks warm, but she couldn't deny the truth anymore. Dr. James Patterson was a trauma therapist who'd volunteered with the Foundation's counseling program. Their relationship had developed slowly, built on shared values rather than hidden agendas. James knew exactly who Elena was, what she'd survived, and why her work mattered. "He's speaking at next month's Trauma-Informed Care Conference," Elena said, trying to sound professional while failing to hide her happiness. The interconnected network of relationships around the foundation had become Elena's chosen family. Rosa's extended family, survivors who'd become advocates, volunteers who'd become staff members, and allies who'd become lifelong friends. Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Rosa. "Dinner at 6. James is making that pasta dish you like. Don't be late." Rosa had become the foundation's unofficial family coordinator, managing relationships and celebrations with the same attention to detail she'd once applied to maintaining Marcus's lies. Her transformation from nervous witness to confident advocate remained one of Elena's proudest achievements. "Before I forget," Elena said, pulling out her Mont Blanc pen to sign a document Maria had prepared, "the scholarship program approved 8 new recipients this week." The Morrison Foundation Scholarship provided full college tuition for children whose parents had survived financial abuse. Elena had learned that financial abuse often disrupted entire families' educational and career prospects, creating generational impacts that extended far beyond the immediate crimes. "One of the recipients is studying criminal justice," Maria reported. "She wants to become a prosecutor specializing in financial crimes." Elena smiled, imagining a future where survivors like that student would reshape the legal system from the inside. The Foundation's influence was expanding beyond direct services into cultural and institutional change. As their meeting concluded, Elena felt the familiar satisfaction of meaningful work. Her calendar showed counseling sessions with new clients, strategy meetings with legislative allies, and dinner with people who knew her complete story and cared about her happiness rather than her bank account. Her Hermes bag, once a symbol of hidden wealth, now carried grant applications, survivor testimonials, and thank-you notes from families the Foundation had helped. The bag's worn leather had developed character through use rather than concealment. Elena locked her office and headed for the parking garage, her steps lighter than they'd been in years. The Foundation's work would continue without her for one evening, supported by a team of people who'd transformed their own pain into collective strength. At the elevator, she encountered Dr. Patterson arriving for his evening counseling session with a new client. He squeezed her hand briefly, a gesture of support and affection that required no hiding. "See you at dinner," he said simply. Elena nodded, understanding that simple honesty remained the Foundation's most radical achievement. 5 years later, Elena stood in the same hospital where her story began, but everything had changed. St. Mary's Hospital now housed the Morrison Foundation's first satellite legal clinic, providing on-site support for patients experiencing financial abuse. The plastic chairs where she'd once endured humiliation were gone, replaced by comfortable seating in consultation rooms where survivors received immediate help. Elena wasn't visiting as a patient or victim today, but as a presenter at the hospital's Domestic Violence Awareness Symposium. Her speech would focus on the intersection of medical care and financial abuse, how hospitals could identify warning signs and connect patients with resources. Financial abuse affects 94% of domestic violence survivors, Elena told the gathered healthcare workers. But medical professionals are uniquely positioned to identify victims and interrupt the cycle of control. After her presentation, Elena walked through the hospital corridors where she'd once felt powerless. The Morrison Foundation's impact was visible everywhere: informational brochures in multiple languages, emergency fund applications at social work stations, and QR codes linking to confidential resources. Dr. Patricia Williams, the hospital's chief of social work, joined Elena near the old waiting area. "Your foundation has helped us connect over 2,000 patients with financial abuse resources," she reported. "The partnership has saved lives." Her phone buzzed with a familiar text from James. "Dinner with Rosa's family tonight. You're bringing dessert." Elena smiled, typing back, "On my way." As she left the hospital, Elena reflected on how her story had transformed from personal nightmare to collective action. The Morrison Foundation now operated in 12 states, had helped over 15,000 survivors, and had influenced policy at the federal level. But perhaps more importantly, Elena had learned that healing happened in community, that justice required both individual courage and systematic change, and that the most powerful response to cruelty was creating something beautiful from the damage. "Sign here and take your 10,000, then disappear." The words cut deep as Claire stared at the divorce papers, 15 years of marriage reduced to pocket change. Marcus leaned forward from his hospital bed, voice dripping with false concern. "It's more than generous, considering what you brought to this marriage." His mistress, Sarah Williams, smirked from the corner. "Finally, some sense. She's been a burden long enough." Claire's fingers traced the cheap plastic pen they'd given her. Her own Mont Blanc waited in her purse. Alongside documents no one here had ever seen proof of an empire worth $700 million. 10,000? She repeated softly. "Take it and start fresh somewhere else," Marcus urged. She looked at the faces around her, all certain she was finished. They didn't know her secret. Her chest burned, not from the surgery, but from betrayal. Tomorrow, the woman they mocked as pathetic would rise, and Marcus would learn what it felt like to be shattered. I opened my eyes slowly, meeting Marcus's startled gaze. "Water," I whispered, my voice hoarse. He fumbled for the cup, suddenly playing the concerned husband. "Of course, baby." "How are you feeling?" "Tired," I said simply, watching Sarah step back into the shadows. But I wasn't tired. I was calculating. Every insult, every laugh, every cruel word was being filed away for later use. 1 week later, I walked through the glass doors of Morrison and Associates, the premier law firm in downtown Atlanta. My appearance was deliberately understated. A simple black dress, minimal makeup, the look of someone who'd just left a hospital bed. What none of the staff bustling around the marble lobby knew was that I owned 80% of this building, this firm, this empire they worked for. The reception desk sat like a fortress, and behind it, Rebecca Martinez looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. Her blonde hair was pulled back severely, and her smile was the kind reserved for people she considered beneath her notice. "Can I help you?" she asked, though her tone suggested she'd rather not. "I need to see Mr. Morrison," I said quietly. Rebecca's perfectly painted eyebrows rose. "Do you have an appointment?" "Because Mr. Morrison doesn't just see walk-ins, especially—" She paused, letting the unfinished sentence hang in the air like smoke. "Especially what?" I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. "Look, honey, this isn't legal aid. We handle high-net-worth clients. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the public defender's office downtown?" From the corner of my eye, I saw Sarah Williams emerge from the elevator. She'd obviously followed me here, probably reporting back to Marcus. She whispered something to another woman, a brunette in an expensive suit who looked at me like I was a stain on their pristine floor. "Claire?" Sarah's voice dripped with false concern. "What are you doing here?" "Shouldn't you be resting?" "I have business to attend to," I replied calmly. The brunette stepped forward. "I'm Jessica Walsh, senior paralegal. Is there some kind of domestic dispute we can help you with? We do handle some pro bono cases." "Pro bono?" Sarah repeated with a smirk. "How generous of them." Rebecca leaned forward conspiratorially. "Look, Mrs. Bennett, maybe you should start with something more manageable. There's a strip mall lawyer about 10 minutes from here who might be more in your price range." I stood there, absorbing every slight, every assumption, every casual cruelty. They saw my dark skin, my modest clothes, my quiet demeanor, and immediately categorized me as someone unworthy of their time. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was surrounded by employees of my own company being turned away from my own building. "I'll wait," I said simply, taking a seat in the lobby. Rebecca's face hardened. "Ma'am, I'm telling you, Mr. Morrison doesn't have time for whatever this is about." Sarah settled into a nearby chair, clearly enjoying the show. "Claire, really, this is embarrassing. Marcus is worried sick about you." I met her eyes steadily. "Is he?" The reception area was filling with other clients, well-dressed white professionals who were greeted warmly, offered coffee, ushered immediately into offices. The contrast was stark and deliberate. Rebecca handed a client form to a man in a $1,000 suit without him even asking, while I sat ignored. "Ma'am," Rebecca called out again, "you're going to need to fill out an intake form and provide a retainer fee of $500 before we can even discuss scheduling a consultation." She slid a clipboard across the marble counter like she was feeding a stray dog. The form asked for assets, income, the nature of my legal needs. Under estimated net worth, I wrote simply, other. Rebecca glanced at my form and snorted. "Other? What does that mean? Your collection of unpaid bills?" Sarah's laughter echoed off the lobby walls. Claire was always creative with numbers. Tom Walker, a junior associate, appeared like a vulture sensing carrion. His suit was expensive but ill-fitting. His smile the practiced smirk of someone who'd learned to look down on others to feel better about himself. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked Rebecca, though his eyes never left me. "This lady wants to see Mr. Morrison about some kind of divorce case, I think." "Divorce?" Tom's eyebrows shot up. "We don't really handle simple domestic cases. That's more family court territory. Maybe you need someone who specializes in smaller matters?" "I need to speak with Mr. Morrison about a business matter," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Tom actually laughed. "Business matter? What kind of business could you possibly—" He caught himself, but the damage was done. Sarah stood up, moving closer. "Tom, isn't it? Claire here doesn't really understand how these things work. She's been unwell." "I see." Tom nodded knowingly. Well, Mrs. Bennett, if you're looking for someone to handle a simple asset division or child support case, I can recommend some attorneys who work with more limited budgets. The condescension was thick enough to choke on. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text message. I'm in the lobby. Need to meet now. Who are you texting? Tom asked suspiciously. Someone who might actually be able to help me, I replied. Rebecca's phone rang and she answered with her practiced, professional voice. Morrison and Associates, how may I? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, right away. She hung up, looking confused. Mr. Morrison wants to see Mrs. Bennett, immediately. The lobby went quiet. Tom's smirk faltered. Sarah's confidence wavered for just a moment. That's impossible, Tom said. He doesn't even know who she is. But I was already standing, smoothing my dress, preparing for the moment that would change everything. The elevator doors opened, and several men in expensive suits stepped out, the firm's partners, looking serious and slightly out of breath. And there, in the center of them, was Robert Morrison himself. The temperature in the lobby seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tom Walker's face went through several shades of pale as he realized that somehow, impossibly, I actually did have a meeting with the managing partner of one of Atlanta's most prestigious law firms. Security! Tom suddenly shouted, his voice cracking slightly. We have someone here who's been harassing clients and staff. The building's security guard, a large black man named Jerome who'd worked there for years, approached hesitantly. He looked confused, glancing between Tom's panicked face and my calm demeanor. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me, Jerome said apologetically. Jerome, I said softly, call Mr. Morrison's office. Tell him Claire Bennett is here. Don't listen to her. Tom was practically shouting now. She's obviously mentally disturbed. Look at her. She thinks she has some kind of connection to Mr. Morrison. Rebecca had joined the chorus. She's been making ridiculous claims all morning. Probably another one of those people who think they can threaten us with lawsuits over nothing. Sarah Williams stepped forward, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Officers, this woman just had major surgery. She's been having delusions since the anesthesia. Her husband is very worried about her mental state. A small crowd had gathered. Other clients, staff members, all watching the spectacle of a black woman being forcibly removed from a place she supposedly didn't belong. Their faces showed mixtures of curiosity, disgust, and schadenfreude. This is exactly what I'm talking about, whispered one well-dressed client to another. The quality of people who try to get in here these days. Tom was building momentum now, feeding off the crowd's energy. Ma'am, you need to understand that this is a professional establishment. We serve serious clients with serious legal needs. We can't have people wandering in off the street making wild claims and disrupting our business. What wild claims? I asked calmly. That you know Mr. Morrison, that you have some kind of business with him. It's obviously fantasy. Sarah nodded vigorously. She's been having episodes since the surgery. Her husband has been trying to get her help, but she keeps insisting she's someone important. The crowd murmured sympathetically. Poor delusional woman, they seemed to be thinking. Someone should really do something about this. I have the right to be here, I said quietly, but my voice carried across the lobby. What right? Tom demanded. What possible right could you have to be in this building, demanding to see our managing partner? That's when Patricia Stone, the firm's senior associate, decided to make her entrance. Patricia was old money Atlanta, the kind of woman who could trace her family tree back to the founding of the city and never let anyone forget it. What in God's name is going on out here? She demanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Just removing a trespasser, Miss Stone, Tom said, puffing up with renewed confidence. Someone who clearly doesn't understand the caliber of our clientele. Patricia looked me up and down with the practiced eye of someone who'd been judging people by their appearance for 60 years. I see. Well, make sure she's escorted out properly. We can't have this sort of disturbance affecting our legitimate clients. The word legitimate hit like a slap. These people, my employees, whether they knew it or not, were treating me like a criminal for the crime of existing in their space while black. The police are on their way, Rebecca announced, though I hadn't seen her make any call. They'll sort this out properly. Sarah Williams pulled out her phone. I should call Marcus. He needs to know where Claire is. But I wasn't moving. I stood in the center of that lobby, surrounded by hostility and hatred, and I waited. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew exactly who was about to walk through those elevator doors. The elevator chimed softly, and the doors slid open. Robert Morrison stepped out, flanked by 3 other white partners and looking like a man with urgent business to attend to. His silver hair was immaculate. His suit probably cost more than most people made in a month, and his expression was thunderously angry. "Where is Mrs. Bennet?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the lobby chatter like a blade. The entire room went silent. Tom Walker's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Patricia Stone actually took a step backward. Rebecca looked like she might faint. "Mr. Morrison," I said simply, standing up from my chair. His face immediately softened when he saw me. "Mrs. Bennet, I am profoundly sorry for the delay. I was in a conference call with Hong Kong that ran long." He strode across the lobby, hand extended. "I hope you haven't been waiting too long." I shook his hand, acutely aware that every eye in the building was on us. "Just a few minutes, Robert." "Good, good." He turned to face the crowd that had gathered to watch my humiliation. His expression was arctic. "Now, someone want to explain to me why my most important client has been standing in our lobby being harassed by our staff?" The silence was deafening. Tom Walker had gone completely white. Patricia Stone looked like she was trying to disappear into the marble floor. Rebecca was clutching her desk like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Your client?" Tom's voice was barely a whisper. Morrison's smile was razor sharp. "Gentlemen, ladies, allow me to introduce Claire Bennet. She is the chairman and CEO of Bennet Holdings, which owns 80% of this firm. She is also the primary investor behind our expansion into international law, our new technology division, and our pro bono program that has helped hundreds of underprivileged clients over the past 3 years. Patricia Stone actually swayed on her feet. That's impossible." "Is it?" Morrison's voice was dangerously quiet. "Mrs. Bennet, would you mind sharing with everyone here your educational background?" I kept my voice level, professional. "Harvard Law, summa cum laude, MBA from Wharton, PhD in economics from MIT. And your previous experience?" "Senior partner at Cravath, Swain and Moore in New York for 8 years. Before that, federal prosecutor for the Southern District of New York. I specialized in white-collar crime and civil rights violations. The lobby was so quiet, you could hear the building's ventilation system humming." Sarah Williams had gone pale as paper. Marcus, wherever he was, had no idea that his pathetic wife had credentials that made most attorneys weep with envy. Morrison continued his introduction like a ringmaster at a circus. "Mrs. Bennet retired from active practice to focus on building her investment portfolio. She currently sits on the boards of 12 major corporations, has a personal net worth of approximately $700 million, and chooses to live quietly because she values privacy over publicity." Tom Walker actually made a small choking sound. "Now," Morrison's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the lobby, "someone is going to explain to me why my most valued client and personal friend has been treated like a criminal in her own building." Rebecca raised a trembling hand. "Mr. Morrison, we didn't know. She didn't say. She looked like what, Rebecca?" The receptionist's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Patricia Stone tried to recover. This is obviously a misunderstanding. If Mrs. Bennet had simply identified herself. Identified herself? Morrison's voice rose slightly. You mean like when she asked to see me by name? Like when she said she had business to discuss? Exactly which part of that wasn't clear enough for you? Sarah Williams, who had been trying to edge toward the exit, suddenly found herself in Morrison's crosshairs. And you are? Sarah Williams, she managed. I'm a friend of Claire's. A friend. Morrison's tone could have frozen hell. Mrs. Bennet, is this woman your friend? I looked at Sarah, really looked at her. The woman who had been in my hospital room, laughing about my impending death. The woman who thought she was richer than me. The woman who was sleeping with my husband while I fought for my life. No, I said simply. She's not. Morrison nodded once, sharply. Security, please escort Miss Williams from the building. She is not to return without Mrs. Bennet's express permission. You can't do this, Sarah protested. This is a public building. Actually, Morrison smiled coldly, this is a private building owned by Mrs. Bennet's holding company. So yes, we absolutely can do this. As security moved toward Sarah, she turned to me with desperation in her eyes. Claire, please. I don't understand what's happening here. Don't you? I asked quietly. You stood in my hospital room and laughed about how poor I was. You made jokes about my funeral with my husband. Did you think I was unconscious? Or did you just not care? The color drained from her face completely. Around us, I could hear people pulling out phones, starting to record. This was about to become very public, very quickly. I never said, Sarah stammered. You said I was pathetic, I continued, my voice carrying clearly across the lobby. You said your trust fund made my teacher's pension look like pocket change. You discussed inheriting my assets after I died. The crowd was murmuring now, a low buzz of shock and growing understanding. Sarah Williams was the other woman, the mistress, and she'd been cruel enough to mock a woman in a hospital bed. Morrison's expression went from cold to glacial. Security, please ensure Ms. Williams finds her way to the street. Immediately. As they led her away, Sarah called back desperately, Claire, you have to understand. I understand perfectly, I replied. I understand that you're exactly who you showed me you were. The doors closed behind her, and suddenly the lobby felt much larger, much quieter. Morrison turned his attention back to the staff. Now, as for the rest of you, Tom Walker. Tom stepped forward like a man walking to his execution. You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings. You have 15 minutes. Mr. Morrison, please. You called security on our most important client. You accused her of being mentally disturbed. You suggested she didn't belong in this building. Would you like me to continue? Tom's mouth worked soundlessly. Patricia Stone. Patricia straightened, trying to maintain some dignity. Sir, you're suspended pending a full review of your conduct. We'll be examining every client interaction you've had in the past year, with particular attention to how you've treated clients of color. That's completely unfair. Is it? You looked at Mrs. Bennet and immediately assumed she was a trespasser. You used the word legitimate to describe other clients, implying she was illegitimate. I'd say a review is not just fair, but necessary. Rebecca was crying now, soft, hiccuping sobs that echoed in the marble space. Rebecca Martinez, you're terminated. Human Resources will contact you about your final paycheck. Please, she whispered. I have a mortgage. I have kids. You should have thought about that before you treated Mrs. Bennet like a charity case, before you suggested she go to the public defender's office, before you made assumptions based on her appearance. Morrison turned to address the entire lobby. Let me be clear to everyone here, staff, clients, visitors. This firm was built on the principle that justice is blind. That means we serve everyone with the same respect, the same professionalism, the same commitment to excellence. What happened here today was a disgrace to everything we claim to stand for. He gestured to me. Mrs. Bennett chose to invest in this firm not because of our prestigious client list or our marble lobby, but because she believed we could be better than the competition. She believed we could treat every client with dignity, regardless of their background, their appearance, or their bank account. The crowd was listening intently now, phones still recording, the story already spreading across social media. Instead, she was subjected to racism, classism, and outright hostility in her own building. She was threatened with arrest for the crime of asking to see me. She was mocked and humiliated by people whose salaries she ultimately pays. Morrison's voice rose to fill every corner of the lobby. This will not happen again. Not here, not ever. Anyone who cannot treat every human being who walks through those doors with basic respect and dignity can find employment elsewhere. He turned back to me, his expression softening. Mrs. Bennett, I cannot adequately apologize for what you've experienced here today. This firm has failed you, and I've failed you as a friend and as a professional. Robert, I said quietly, sometimes the only way to reveal a problem is to let it surface naturally. Today has been educational. Indeed it has. And I promise you, changes will be made, immediately. He gestured toward the elevators. Shall we continue our meeting in my office? As we walked toward the elevator, I could hear the whispers starting behind us. Phones were buzzing with text messages, social media posts, news tips. The story was spreading. Local woman reveals $700 million fortune after being humiliated at law firm. Black CEO owns building where she was treated like criminal. The hashtags were already forming. Hashtag know who you are disrespecting. Hashtag justice is blind. Hashtag never judge a book. But there was one more conversation I needed to have. I stopped walking and turned around. Actually, Robert, before we go upstairs, there's something I'd like to share with everyone here. He looked surprised but nodded. Of course. I walked back to the center of the lobby where dozens of people were still gathered, still recording, still trying to process what they'd witnessed. My name is Claire Bennett, I began, my voice carrying clearly. A week ago, I was in the hospital recovering from major surgery. While I lay in that bed, fighting for my life, my husband and his mistress stood over me and laughed. They mocked my poverty. They discussed my funeral arrangements. They celebrated what they thought would be their financial windfall after my death. The lobby was dead silent now. They had no idea that the pathetic woman they were ridiculing had built a $700 million empire through intelligence, hard work, and strategic investments. They didn't know that their victim owned buildings, companies, and assets across 3 continents. I paused, letting that sink in. But this story isn't really about money. It's about respect. It's about the assumptions we make when we look at someone and decide, in 3 seconds, whether they deserve our courtesy or our contempt. I gestured around the lobby. Everyone who works here, everyone who visits here, everyone who walks through those doors is a human being deserving of basic dignity. You shouldn't need to know someone's net worth to treat them with kindness. You shouldn't need to see their credentials to offer them respect. My voice grew stronger. What happened here today happens every day, in every city, to people who don't have the luxury of revealing a fortune to prove their worth. It happens to people who will never have the satisfaction of watching their tormentors get fired. It happens because we've created a world where your value as a human being is determined by how much money someone thinks you have, how expensive your clothes are, how closely you match their idea of what success looks like. I looked directly at the cameras that were recording. I'm sharing this story not because I want sympathy, but because I want everyone to remember something. The person you're dismissing, the person you're ignoring, the person you're treating badly, because they don't look like they belong in your world. That person might be exactly who you think they're not. But more importantly, even if they're not, they still deserve better. The applause started slowly. One person clapping, then another, then a wave of sound that filled the marble space. But I wasn't finished. To the Tom Walkers and Patricia Stones of the world, who think they can determine someone's worth with a glance, you can't. To the Rebecca Martinezes, who guard access to opportunity based on their prejudices, you're wrong. And to the Sarah Williamses, who think cruelty is acceptable when you believe no one is watching, someone is always watching. I turned toward the elevators one final time. Never underestimate the power of underestimating someone, and never forget that the person you're looking down on might be the same person who decides your future. As Robert and I walked toward the elevator, I pulled out my phone. There were 15 missed calls from Marcus. Word was clearly spreading faster than I'd expected. The elevator doors closed behind us, sealing us away from the chaos in the lobby. Robert was quiet for a long moment. "Claire," he said finally, "I've known you for 5 years. I've seen you negotiate billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. I've watched you take apart opposing counsel like a surgeon with a scalpel. But what you just did down there, that was something else entirely." "What do you mean?" "You could have destroyed those people. With your resources, your connections, your influence, you could have ruined their lives completely. Instead, you taught them a lesson they'll never forget, and you gave everyone watching a masterclass in dignity under pressure." The elevator reached the top floor. "Robert, there's something else we need to discuss." "Of course. What do you need?" "I need you to prepare divorce papers, and I need you to do it very, very carefully." His eyebrows rose. "Divorce papers?" "Marcus has no idea what he's about to lose. And I intend to keep it that way until the papers are served." Robert smiled grimly. "I take it this won't be an amicable dissolution?" "Amicable?" I thought about Marcus and Sarah laughing over my hospital bed. "No, Robert. I don't think amicable is the right word for what this is going to be." As we walked into his office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction of being exactly who I'd always been, but finally letting the world see it. The quiet teacher was gone. The patient wife was finished. The woman who absorbed insults and swallowed her pride had left the building. Robert's office was a testament to old money and older power, mahogany panels, leather-bound law books, and windows overlooking downtown Atlanta. He gestured for me to sit in one of the plush chairs facing his massive desk. "Claire, before we discuss your divorce proceedings, I need to ask, are you prepared for what this is going to unleash?" His blue eyes were serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. "The media attention alone." I smiled for the first time all day. "Robert, I've been preparing for this my entire life." I just didn't know it. He leaned back in his chair. "Tell me what you need." "I need Marcus served with papers at his office tomorrow, in front of his colleagues. I want him to experience the same public humiliation I felt downstairs, but I want it to hurt more." Robert's eyebrows rose. "Claire, that's unusually vindictive for you." "Is it?" I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made in the hospital room. Marcus's voice filled the office, cold and calculating as he discussed my imminent death with his mistress. Robert's face went white. "Jesus Christ, Claire, he said this while you were unconscious? While I was recovering from major surgery? While I was fighting for my life?" I turned off the recording. And that's just the beginning. I opened my purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "Sarah Williams thinks her trust fund makes her rich. She has no idea what real wealth looks like." Robert opened the envelope and whistled low. "These are financial records. Every penny Marcus has spent on her over the past year. The apartment he rented for her under a shell company. The jewelry, the trips, the car. all purchased with money from our joint accounts, accounts he thought I never monitored. How much are we talking about? $247,000. He's been systematically stealing from our marriage to fund his affair. Robert was scanning the documents, his expression growing more shocked with each page. Claire, this is fraud, embezzlement from marital assets. We can pursue criminal charges. That's just the appetizer. I pulled out another folder. Sarah Williams doesn't have a trust fund. She's a dental hygienist who maxed out 3 credit cards trying to keep up with Marcus's lifestyle. The rich girlfriend story was a complete fabrication. You investigated her? I investigated everyone. Sarah Williams makes $38,000 a year and lives paycheck to paycheck. The expensive clothes Marcus bought her, the jewelry he gave her. She's been playing dress-up with stolen money, pretending to be someone she's not. Robert was shaking his head in amazement. And Marcus believes she's wealthy? Marcus believes whatever makes him feel better about betraying his wife. But here's the beautiful part. Sarah thinks Marcus is wealthy too. She has no idea he's a mid-level marketing manager at a pharmaceutical company making $65,000 a year. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street below. They've been lying to each other as much as they've been lying to me. It's actually poetic. What about the trust fund story? Completely fabricated. Sarah told Marcus she had family money to explain why she could afford to go on expensive dates. She was actually going into debt to impress him. Meanwhile, Marcus was stealing from me to afford those same dates. They're both living in a fantasy. Robert was quiet for a long moment. Claire, you realize this changes everything? This isn't just about adultery anymore. This is about financial fraud, theft, conspiracy, and it gets better. I returned to my chair and pulled out a third folder. Remember how they discussed my teacher's pension with such contempt? Yes. I was never just a teacher, Robert. Teaching was my cover story. For the past 15 years, while Marcus thought I was grading papers and planning lessons, I was building Bennett Holdings. Every parent-teacher conference was actually a board meeting. Every summer break was me traveling to oversee international acquisitions. Robert stared at me. 15 years? I started small. Used my signing bonus from the law firm to buy rental properties. Then I moved into commercial real estate, then tech startups, then international investments. Marcus never questioned the extra money because I told him I was tutoring students for extra income. And he believed that? Marcus has never respected my intelligence enough to question anything I told him. In his mind, I was just his simple black wife, grateful to have married above my station. He never bothered to actually understand who I was or what I was capable of. I opened the folder and spread out documents across Robert's desk. Bennett Holdings now owns real estate in 12 countries, has controlling interests in 43 companies, and maintains offshore accounts in 7 different currencies. My personal net worth as of this morning is $734 million. Robert's coffee cup slipped from his fingers, clattering against his desk. 700 million? Marcus thinks he's going to inherit my small teacher's pension. Instead, he's about to discover that he married one of the most successful black women in America, and then threw it all away for a broke dental hygienist. Claire, this makes you one of the wealthiest women in Georgia, in the entire Southeast. I know exactly what it makes me, Robert, and now so does everyone else. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and smiled. Speaking of which, the story is already spreading faster than we anticipated. Channel 7 wants an interview. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution is calling it the scandal that rocked Atlanta's elite, and TMZ is offering a 7-figure sum for exclusive details. Robert was still staring at the financial documents. Claire, why? Why keep this secret for so long? Why pretend to be someone you weren't? I thought about that question. Really thought about it. Because I learned early that being a successful black woman makes people uncomfortable. It challenges their assumptions, threatens their worldview. It was easier to let Marcus feel like the provider, the success story, the one with all the power. But surely he must have suspected something. Robert, Marcus sees what he wants to see. When our mortgage was mysteriously paid off early, I told him I'd received an inheritance from a great aunt he'd never met. When I bought us a bigger house, I said I'd won a small lottery. When I could afford expensive vacations, I claimed they were discounted teacher packages. And he never questioned any of it. Why would he? It fit his narrative perfectly. Lucky Claire. Blessed to have a smart husband who could afford nice things. It never occurred to him that his wife might be smarter, more successful, or more financially savvy than he was. Robert shook his head slowly. The arrogance is breathtaking. The arrogance is about to cost him everything. I gathered up the documents and put them back in their folders. I want you to include all of this in the divorce filing. Every stolen penny, every lie, every moment of betrayal. I want it all on public record. Claire, are you sure? Once this becomes public, your privacy is gone forever. Everyone will know who you are, what you're worth, how you built your fortune. I stood up and smoothed my dress. My privacy was already gone the moment Marcus decided to humiliate me in that hospital room. The only difference is that now I'm controlling the narrative. And what narrative is that? That you should never underestimate a quiet black woman. That success doesn't always look the way people expect it to. That sometimes the person you're looking down on is actually looking down on you. Robert was quiet for a moment, then he smiled. A real smile, not the professional one he wore for clients. You know what, Claire? I think Marcus and Sarah are about to learn the most expensive lesson of their lives. They certainly are. I picked up my purse and headed toward the door. Oh, and Robert? Make sure the papers are served right at lunchtime. I want the entire office to see. As I walked toward the elevator, I could hear Robert behind me, already on the phone with his assistant, beginning the process that would change everything. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, watching the numbers count down as I descended from the penthouse to the lobby. The lobby was quieter now, but I could feel eyes on me as I walked across the marble floor. The whispers followed me like a wake, phones appearing as people tried to capture video of the woman who'd just turned their world upside down. Outside, Atlanta stretched before me in the late afternoon sun. The city I'd conquered in secret, the empire I'd built in shadows, all of it finally coming into the light. My phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. I answered on the third ring. Hello, Marcus. Claire, what the hell is going on? People are calling me about some story involving you and Morrison and Associates. They're saying crazy things about money and... Nothing crazy about it, Marcus. Just the truth finally coming out. What truth? Claire, you're scaring me. Just come home and we'll talk about this. Home? I looked up at the building that housed my law firm, my investment offices, my empire. I am home, Marcus. I've been home all along. You're the one who's been lost. Claire Bennett, the woman who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd overcome every obstacle thrown at her, who'd learned to fight battles with her mind instead of her fists. That woman was just getting started. And Marcus, Sarah, and everyone else who thought they knew who I was were about to get the education of their lives.